What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today I have a deck profile for you guys. This one's going to be on SalamanGREATs. Sorry I had to do that. SalamanGREATs was one of the first more meta decks that I picked up maybe 6 or 8 months ago. And it's a deck that I really enjoyed playing. And it's just been a deck that really focuses on controlling your opponent. And it's more of like I said, like a control-based deck, which is pretty fun. It's also really, really affordable, and which makes it really appealing. So if you're just trying to get back into Yu-Gi-Oh or whatever, it's a really good deck to help you learn the meta and kind of prepare for what you might run into, and teaches you kind of where to choke decks, which is really nice. That way you can focus on how to counter decks, and it makes you pay attention, I feel like. And so that's why I really enjoy playing the deck. It's super affordable, like I mentioned, so you can probably build the majority of the deck for 50 or $70, which is really cheap, especially for how powerful of a deck it is. It is kind of more of a rogue strategy at the moment, just because of it's had kind of a fall from grace just because of all the new more powerful decks that have come out. I think it just needs kind of an extra push to really kind of push it back up into the higher tiers. For example, if we got Mirage Stalio back or something like that, maybe if we got 2 Gazelles, that would probably help a lot too. But overall, just a really strong deck, really solid all around, and a great deck to just try out, especially if you're coming back to Yu-Gi-Oh after a while or just trying to get into it again. So without further ado, we'll jump right into it. Alright, so we're going to start off with triple Baylinks. Baylinks is essentially the heart and soul of the deck. Baylinks will allow you to search the field spell. The field spell will allow you to use SalamanGREAT Link monsters as material to go into SalamanGREAT Link monsters. And the reason why that's important is because if you see cards like SalamanGREAT Wolf, which we run 3 of, Wolf has a secondary effect if you summoned him using another Sunlight Wolf. And so basically its first effect is really important. If a monster is summoned in a zone that it points to, it allows you to grab a fire monster from your graveyard, which is really cool because that could be pretty much anything from Gazelle to Ash Blossom to any of the other SalamanGREAT monsters, which is super important. And then also it allows you to, once per turn, grab a SalamanGREAT spell or trap card from your deck and add it back. I mean, not from your deck, from your graveyard, and add it back to your hand, which is really important in recurring a lot of your resources. The SalamanGREAT spell and trap cards are really useful. There are some that destroy monsters, some that negate effects, stuff like that. So it's very good for recurring all those resources and allowing you to stay in the game for longer. Although you might not have a huge offensive presence, you have a huge presence and just control over the game. The next and the last of the SalamanGREAT Link monsters is SalamanGREAT Yugioh. This one you don't really use that much. He's really good for bouncing back spells and traps back into the deck. But other than that, you don't really use him too often. You can basically second summon him into himself, which will allow you to pick a monster in your graveyard and target a monster they control. The monster they control becomes the attack of the monster in your graveyard. So if you do have an Ash engrave, you can make one of your opponent's monsters attack 0. But that's really not that important, and you really only go into him if you kind of run through a lot of your other resources, or if you just need to bounce back spells and traps to go for an OTK. And that's going to pretty much do it for the SalamanGREAT engine. Next we have Splash Mage. Splash Mage is really nice. It allows you to go into Access Code Talker after only having something like Jack Jaguar and Spinny. So let's just say you summon Jack Jaguar, you activate Spinny's effect, special summon Spinny. Now you have 2 monsters to go into Splash Mage. Splash Mage allows you to grab the Jack Jaguar out of the graveyard. Then you use those 2 to go into the Transcode Talker. And then Transcode Talker allows you to special summon Splash Mage back, and you go into Access Code Talker. So it's really easy to go into some of your main kill points. Another good one is Update Jammer. Update Jammer is really good for allowing your monsters to attack twice. So you go into Update Jammer, you use that to go, plus another SalamanGREAT monster or whatever, to go into Transcode Talker. Transcode Talker special summons back Update Jammer from the grave. You can use these 2 to go into something like Access Code Talker. Access Code Talker is super useful for setting up the OTKs for SalamanGREATs. So basically you go into Access Code Talker with Transcode and Update Jammer, and then it allows you to gain, first of all, 3,000 attacks, so now you're at 53, and you can attack twice, and this thing can basically pop your entire opponent's board if you just pop the earth and the wind, and then maybe one of the fire SalamanGREAT monsters, stuff like that. So it allows you to basically break your opponent's board and attack for game. And also all of its effect your opponent can't respond to, so it makes it very small for them to have activation windows for you to be able to just basically go into Access Code Talker and just basically win the duel. You can substitute this for something else. Access Code Talker is pretty expensive. It's $70 at least right now. So you can actually substitute for something like Topologic Zeroboros. Not quite the same, but still a similar idea where let's just say you Potter Desired that turn or that duel, then this thing would have close to like 5,000 attack. And so you could essentially go into Zeraboros out of these two again, and then now he can attack twice, he has 5,000 attack, or you could just use his effect, special something in one of the fields, and then basically reset the board for next turn or something. And then the last Link monster we're running is going to be Borreload Dragon. This is really important for getting rid of Dragoon. So you go into Borreload, attack Dragoon, take it, and then now you have the Dragoon for your turn that you can use, for their turn, that you can use to disrupt them, and then it just leaves the field after that. So it's non-targeting, and a really easy way to just grab the Dragoon off their field. And then now for the Xyz monsters, we're looking at the Baguska and Abyss Dweller. These are some of the best Xyz monsters right now, I think, especially for this deck. So Baguska, when it's in defense, your opponent's monster's effects, any monster effect that activates when a monster's in defense position is negated. And while he's in defense position, all monsters are switched to defense position. So anytime your opponent summons a monster and wants to activate the effect, it's going to get negated. So really good, especially since we use like a ton of Link monsters. So Link monsters obviously can't go into defense position, so really useful for that. Abyss Dweller also really important for decks that are very heavily reliant on the graveyard. You summon Abyss Dweller on standby, take off the material, and then now they can't activate anything in the graveyard. And so basically for like a lot of decks, that's a huge shutdown. That's pretty much it for the extra decks. Alright, now for the main deck, the normal summonable monsters that I'm running are 2 Flame Buffalo, 1 Lady Debug, and then 2 Salamangreat Foxies. I used to be really big on Lady Debug, but recently somebody told me something that I think makes a lot of sense. So the reason why people are leaning towards Flame Buffalo more is because Lady Debug gets hit by literally every hand trap. So Effect Veiler, it gets hit by Ash, it gets hit by Ghost Ogre, all that stuff. With Flame Buffalo, you actually have a way to unbreak yourself without getting hand trapped. So for example, like if you go into Flame Buffalo, you summon into Phalanx, and then now Flame Buffalo is chain link 1, Phalanx is chain link 2, and then now your opponent can't hand trap your Buffalo, especially because it's activating in the graveyard, so you can't Veiler it or anything like that. So you just discard a Cybers, draw 2. You're almost always going to have like another Cybers in hand. Very rarely do you not. And so it makes it really easy, or you can use something like Cyanide Mining to grab another one, or anything like that. So it really makes it easy to unbreak yourself. Whereas with Lady Debug, you know, let's say if you summoned it and like they activated Ghost Ogre, like you're done for the turn. Like there's nothing else you can do. You've already done your normal summon. You can't activate Gazelle off of that because it's not a Salamangreat monster, stuff like that. So, and then Foxy is just another normal summon monster. If you have like nothing else, it allows you to search the top 3 cards of your deck. Usually you use the other effect, which allows it to switch summon itself by discarding a SalamanGREAT card. So that's pretty much it for the normal summons. Next up is the SalamanGREAT engine itself. So that's 1 Gazelle, 2 Spinny, 2 Jaguars, and then a Falco. So I think, well, the 1 Gazelle is pretty obvious, it's limited. The 2 Spinny I think is pretty optimal. I've seen some people, what they end up doing is if they feel like they don't really need like one of the Spinnies, you can like side one out, which makes sense. I think double Jaguar is important because this helps you recur a lot of resources. So if you if one gets, you know, removed for whatever reason or anything like that, you still have another one, which is really useful for just recurring your SalamanGREAT engine. And then Falco is also really good as well for allowing you to bounce back your Gazelle back to hand. And so all these together work really well to just recur your resources over and over again. And that makes it really easy for you to just continue to control the duel. Next up we have the extenders, which is just going to be 3 Parallel Exceeds. These are really good for extending into your for your rank 4 monsters. So going into Baguska, going into Abyss Dweller, super easy. Just go basically summon Phalanx, go into Parallel Exceed, and then you're like pretty much straight into Baguska. And super useful just in general for extending those. You could even use them for other kind of extensions as well, for extra link summons if you need to go into Access Code Talker or whatever. So just really useful overall. Also really good for chain blocking. Next up are going to be the hand traps. So we run 2 Nibiru, 3 Ash. The Nibiru, I'm not entirely sure about right now. I see there's a lot of decks who can really kind of play around Nibiru or just straight up play through it. So I'm not 100% sure on the Nibiru. Maybe worth it to sub that out for something else. Maybe something like DD Crow, or maybe even Ghost Ogre, Droll, and Lockbird, something like that. Ash is pretty useful. Ash pretty much stops your opponent from searching, which is really important. If you can hit the right cards in the deck, it's super useful. This is probably like the more expensive part of the deck, but other than that, the deck is super cheap. So aside from access code talker, you could probably build the entire deck for, not including these, probably like in between like 50 to like 80 bucks, which is pretty solid for a deck this powerful. I mean, it's fallen a lot recently, but like it's still a very strong deck and very good at controlling. And so, especially if you learn to play it really well, you can actually perform like just really nicely and really take control of the duel. So that pretty much covers it for monsters. As far as spells go, we're looking at one Sanctuary and one Circle. Circle's limited, so that's pretty easy. Sanctuary, you only really need to run one because you can pretty much search it every turn, even if it gets like negated, just because Balinks searches it every turn, and you're gonna want Balinks in the graveyard all the time to protect your other Salamangreat monsters. So it's really easy to just get this in from the deck to your hand pretty much instantly. So you really only need one. And then you also don't really want to brick with it, so like you don't want to start with it turn one just because it's so easy to search. Next up, we have triple Signet mining. Pretty self-explanatory. Discard a card, search for a Cyber's card, level 4 or lower. Super useful, especially because a lot of the Salamangreats want to be in the graveyard anyway. Triple Desires. Desires is really useful because there's nothing in this deck that you really care if it gets removed, aside from Gazelle and the field spell, the Sanctuary. So those are, like I said, the field spell is super easy to search pretty much the beginning of the turn. So you can search the field spell, get it out. If you have a way to get out Gazelle, you want to get Gazelle out of the deck. If you can't Desires it by accident. And there's a lot of ways you can search for Gazelle, being Signet mining if you have to use like Lady Debug, whatever. Salamangreat Circle, stuff like that. So if you can get it out of the deck before you Desires, that's perfect. If not, it kind of sucks if you do Desires it, but it's pretty unlikely. So Desires is super useful because everything you're running like multiples of anyway. Will of the Salamangreat, really good for special summoning. Gives you a lot of extra extensions and allows you to, the secondary effect is really nice where you contribute it. So like for example, if you have a wolf that was second summoned on your field, you can basically sack this, special summon 2 Salamangreat monsters, go into Splash Mage, continue into like Access Code Talker. So pretty useful. And then last, I have one Forbidden Droplet. I'm still playing around with this card. It's something I would want to try out with 2 if I had to, but they're pretty expensive, and so I only have one that I just pulled from a box. So pretty useful card. It does take a lot of resources sometimes though, which can be pretty bad, especially like turn 1. You kind of want to save as many resources as possible. So it's kind of a hit or miss. I don't know. I might sub it out for something else. Now onto the traps. We do run a few. First off is 2 Imperms. Imperm is super good. One of the more expensive cards in the deck, although now it is getting cheaper with the release of the maximum gold. If you don't want to spend the money on Imperms, you can use Veilers, pretty much almost exactly the same, except for Imperms are really nice for blocking out spell and trap card zones, and for being able to use on your turn. And also not during the main phase, which is really nice, but regardless, you could use either or. Double Salamangreat Roar, and then 2 Salamangreat Rage. So Roar negates a spell, trap, or monster effect, and I think even a monster summon as well. So Roar is really useful for just getting rid of like problematic cards. It's also a counter trap, which means your opponent can't respond to it unless they have another counter trap, which is really helpful. Rage is really nice. You're usually going to be wanting using the secondary effect, which is when you have a double summoned Salamangreat Link monster, you can destroy cards on the field equal to that Link card's rating. And also it doesn't target, which is really nice. So because it doesn't target, it allows you to get around a lot of different stuff. Just really solid card for getting rid of cards. And then last, we have 1 Imperial Order. Super useful for just getting rid of spell cards in general. And then Paleozoic Deinomiscus. If I had a second droplet, this would probably be a second droplet for testing. But this is also a really fun card to run in this deck because, like I said before, a lot of your Salamangreats really want to be in the grave anyway. And it helps you discard for that, as well as banishes a card, which is really nice disruption. Alright guys, so that pretty much wraps it up for the Salamangreat deck profile. Like I said, it's super budget friendly, so let's just say you decided to go with everything except for the Access Code Talker and the Forbidden Droplet. You're looking at roughly about $100 for the entire deck, which includes, the whole extra deck, subbing out Access Code Talker with Topologic Zeraboros, the whole main deck including the Imperms, the Nibiru, and the Ashes. And so $100 for all that, I would say, is a pretty solid deal, especially with how well the deck can perform under those budget constraints. And then not only that, if you wanted to add the access code talker, you're looking at about 170, which is a little bit more pricey, but access code talker is pretty useful just in a lot of decks in general, so I feel like it's pretty much worth it. And that's pretty much going to be it. I'm going to upload a video with some combos as well. I didn't want to include it in this one because I felt like it would be too long. And so I'll have a separate video for that that goes over some combos and stuff you can do with the SalamanGREAT deck. But it's a little bit more about control, so the combos aren't going to be like anything crazy. They're just more about setting up the board so that you can control your opponent for next turn. That's pretty much it. I hope you guys liked the video. Feel free to like and subscribe. Let me know what you think. That's pretty much going to be it. Have a good day.